In Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 4, it reads, "Now the Lord had said to Abram, Get out of your country, from your family and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." So Abram departed as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. In Genesis chapter 15, verses 13 and 14, it says, "Then he said to Abram, Know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and will serve them. And they will afflict them 400 years, and also the nation whom they serve I will judge. Afterward they shall come out with great possessions." There is a common misunderstanding among many who read the Bible or have heard about the children of Israel being in bondage in Egypt, and assume they were in bondage for 400 years because of this verse. However, this is not the case. In this video, we will examine the scriptures and the timeline to gain a clearer understanding of these events. Here is the timeline that we will use to illustrate this. In this timeline, we will add Abraham, called Abram at the time, who is said to be 75 years old. This is where the calling of Abraham begins, and this will be our starting point. In Galatians chapter 3, verses 16 and 17, Paul writes, "Moreover, the promises were spoken to Abraham and his seed. He does not say, and to the seeds as concerning many, but as concerning one, and to your seed who is Christ. This I say, covenant previously confirmed by God. The law, which has appeared after 430 years, does not cancel so as to nullify the promise." This is a crucial verse in understanding the timeline, since Paul, through the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, wrote these words. He makes it clear that the promises God made to Abraham are not nullified by the law of Moses, which came 430 years later. We will now add the 430 years to the timeline, starting with the calling of Abraham. This now gives us our approximate time from the calling of Abraham to God giving Moses the law to give to the people of Israel. We can also add 400 years of affliction and align their conclusions, as both periods ended within about 3 months of each other. 25 years after God called Abraham to leave Haran, his son Isaac was born. Genesis 21:2 says, "For Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken to him." Verse 5 adds, "Now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him." Based on these verses, we can add 25 years to Abraham's age and include Isaac's birth in our timeline. Genesis 21 verses 8 and 9 reads, "So the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the same day that Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, scoffing." The Bible does not specify how old Isaac was when he was weaned, but we can infer that he was not very young. More likely, he was about 5 years old, and Ishmael might have mocked him for being older than usual for weaning. This marks the beginning of our 400 years of affliction, so we will add this event to our timeline. From here, we can add the remaining 70 years of Abraham's life, which gives us a total of 175 years. At this point, we will quickly fill in the remaining details of the timeline, since the major events have been addressed. Looking at the full timeline, we can see that Isaac was 60 years old when Jacob was born. He lived for an additional 120 years, reaching a total age of 180. Jacob was 130 years old when he traveled to Egypt and stood before Pharaoh. He lived another 17 years in Egypt, passing away at the age of 147. Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh and interpreted the dream of 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine. When his family came to Egypt and his father stood before Pharaoh, Joseph was 39 years old. He lived another 71 years, dying at the age of 110. If you look at the timeline where it shows the 430 years split, you will notice that the 430 years are divided into 2 equal periods, with the division occurring precisely when Jacob stood before Pharaoh. In Exodus chapter 1, verses 6 through 8, it reads, "And Joseph died, all his brothers, and all that generation. But the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly, multiplied and grew exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them. Now there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. Even if we assume that the Israelites entered bondage immediately upon Joseph's death, the maximum period would be 144 years. However, this is unlikely. That generation passed away, and it took time for a new Pharaoh who did not know Joseph to come to power. This passage of time leads us to the birth of Moses, which would be about 64 years after the death of Joseph. The life of Moses is traditionally divided into three 40-year periods. The first as an Egyptian prince, the second as a shepherd in Midian, and the third leading the Israelites in the wilderness. This understanding comes from Acts 7, verse 23, Acts 7, verses 29 and 30, Deuteronomy 29, verse 5, and Deuteronomy 34, verse 7. It would be Joshua who would lead the people into the promised land shortly after Moses' death. In summary, the 430 years of sojourning spans from the promise to Abraham to the giving of the law at Mount Sinai. The 400 years of affliction began with Ishmael's mocking of Isaac and include periods of sojourning and affliction, not continuous bondage in Egypt. The actual time the Israelites spent in Egypt could not have exceeded 215 years. Joshua was the one who would lead the people of Israel into the promised land shortly after Moses' death. This concludes our lesson on From Abraham to the Promised Land. Thank you for watching.